In certain ways. If you look at economic indicators, they're not as good as maybe they could have been if the global economy would be better. But in that time, Eritrea is the only country in Africa to reach its Millennium Development Goals for 2015. Roughly 98% vaccine and immunization rate, significant reductions in malaria, HIV, AIDS, diarrhea, other preventable diseases, which literally devastate other African countries. Anybody know how many children die in Africa of these preventable diseases? And that is not happening in Eritrea. I wonder why. reduced infant mortality by 2/3, reduced maternal mortality by nearly 80% since independence. That's only 25 years. Now, there's a lot of young women in this audience, and understand that what's happening for young women in Eritrea is almost non-existent on the African continent. They are a fundamental part of the program for development. Women's education is included in all aspects of development, and that's important. And this is something that these supposed human rights organizations will not talk about. Why? They seem so interested in gender equality, and yet when it comes to Eritrea, a secular country that is able to develop both for men and women, not discussed. I wonder why. Access to health care and clean drinking water, many other things that I don't have time to go into, but we could look at all of the numbers. We could talk about 99% vaccination rate for 1-year-olds. We can talk about doubling population with access to electricity, all of these things. None of this qualifies as so-called human rights. And the reason is because it goes against the dominant narrative. It goes against the institutions that want to control Eritrea, because they don't have the excuse that Eritrea doesn't care about human rights. Because it seems to me, from my little old independent perspective, that Eritrea is deeply focused on the most important human rights. And I just want to return to Thomas Sankara for a second, because one other thing that he said that I think is really important, he famously said, "He who feeds you controls you." I want you to think about the implications of that statement just for a moment. As a child, you're dependent on your mother or your father or whomever is raising you to feed you. Isn't that true? So then, in the final analysis, when you look at it, didn't that mother or father or whoever was raising you also, by definition, control you? They could tell you what you could and couldn't do. They could tell you whether you had to go to sleep, whether you should stay awake, when to eat your dinner, when to do your homework, and all of the rest of that. So why would anybody believe that nations and international institutions don't do the same thing? Of course they do. The reason is because they want you to see yourself. And when I say you, I of course mean the entire country and whole peoples in Africa and elsewhere. They want to see you in a subservient and submissive position to them. You don't get to come to the table as equals. You must be beneath them. That's the form of power. That's what control is. And this is how it works. This is neocolonialism. What Eritrea has been doing is working to develop the independent capacity to feed itself, to feed its children, to educate its future generations to the greatest extent possible, given conditions. So the question then is, what is the point of all this talk about development? The reason, why am I standing up here spending all this time talking about that? The reason is because I want to situate Eritrea within two what I would consider to be interrelated but equally important contexts. On the one hand, the struggle of post-colonial Africa for independence. On the other hand, the anti-imperialist struggle globally. And this is important because no matter how many times they use this ridiculous phrase, and you always hear it, I don't know why, it's like a talking point. They don't say Eritrea, they say tiny Eritrea. They love to say tiny Eritrea. But the reason is not because of Eritrea's land mass. There are plenty of countries much, much smaller than Eritrea. Exactly. The reason they say tiny Eritrea is because that's how they see the country, as tiny, as powerless, as irrelevant, as a fly buzzing around their head, a nuisance. The reason that I wanted to say that we situate Eritrea in this context is because the implications of what it means for Eritrea to be in this struggle for post-colonial independence and anti-imperialist struggle. It is because those countries that have found themselves in that position are often victimized, attacked, destroyed. Take a look at Libya in 2011. Take a look at what Libya was doing, many similar things. Human Development Index was the highest in Africa, equal to many countries in Europe. They were nationalizing and distributing oil resources. They were pushing healthcare, education, development. And this is part of the reason they had to destroy the country and to destroy Gaddafi. The same is true in Venezuela. The same was true in Burkina Faso under Sankara, and Congo under Lumumba, and Zimbabwe even under Mugabe. They see these countries not as objectively bad, they see them as a threat. Eritrea's rejection of aid in favor of national development, they cannot abide this. Mobilization of labor resources of the population, human capacity, building human capacity rather than being dependent on Europe and the rest of these countries. Rejection of what they call democracy in favor of improved living standards, in favor of all of these improved indicators of human development. They can't stand this. Upholding true human rights. Somebody said up on this stage, I will not name names, but somebody said, well, they don't think that Eritrea is so important. Really? How about its location on the Mandeb Strait? How about the fact that a huge percentage of global trade goes through that strait? And wouldn't certain countries like to control whether or not Chinese ships get to go through that strait? Of course they would. This is part of their game. None of this, none of what I just said. I just made a bunch of basic points that is plainly evident to anybody who knows anything about Eritrea or about Africa in general, and none of this is discussed in major media. Why? The answer is because media, the major media, the corporate media, is part of that system I talked about at the beginning of this speech. In the United States, if you born and raised here as I am, you understand, hopefully, probably, that there's a monopoly on media in this country. 6 corporations control almost all media outlets. And these corporations have interlocking boards of directors. Individuals who run these corporations go golfing together, go to their friends', children's birthdays and the like. They work together. They won't tell you that, but that's a fact. You also have this state-funded media around the world that executes the agenda of these state funders. And all of these institutions cannot talk about these very important issues. They cannot allow them into the conversation. They work to support and reinforce dominant narratives. Now think about what a narrative is for a second. A narrative is the story that is told. And they want to control the story that is told about Eritrea. They want to control how the information is conveyed so that they can control the way that people think about the country. And until you can change that, until you can break that control over thought and over narratives, Eritrea will continue to suffer in terms of the story that is told about it. You turn on the news now and you see a lot of talk about, well, what's the buzzword? What's the key word? Migrants, African migrants. Yet they often don't give you a context, do they? They don't give you the essential reasons for why this is going on, the role that the empire has played in destroying countries and pushing people to where they have no option but to get on a boat and try to make it to Europe, or to, be kidnapped by death squads roaming their countries, such as you have in Libya, such as you have in Syria, such as you have in various places. The corporate media won't allow anti-imperialist voices. Now, I'm standing here saying all of this. Never in a million years would they let me say this on television, on any mainstream outlet at least. Certain outlets will, but they're not considered mainstream. They're considered mouthpieces of foreign governments or what have you, or independent media outlets in various forms. Now, there's a reason why I'm pointing out this question of media and why I wanted to focus on it here in the closing part of my discussion. I assume, I'm not really paying attention to the time, I assume that's the closing part of my discussion. There's a reason why I'm pointing this out. Because the task before, well, all of us, but those of you in this room, is to become fighters. You're not simply here to say, I don't believe what they're saying, they're lying. Of course they are. But so what the hell are you going to do about it? There's a number of things that you can do. And, well, let me just say, first of all, they would love for you to believe that there's nothing you can do. Because as soon as you believe that there's nothing you can do about it, it's game over for you. You'll do what they tell you to do because, hey, might as well live comfortably, do my thing, hope nobody bothers me, make it work somehow. This is a lie. That's what they would love for you to think. The reality is there's quite a lot you can do. First of all, one of the things that I try to do, and I'm certainly not the only one, we have comrades around the world who are doing similar things. Unfortunately, not too many of us, but there are some. Try to first utilize platforms that already exist. So as Elias said before I came up here, I have managed to be able to kind of break through on some non-Western media outlets, RT, Press TV, CCTV, Telesur, and the like. These are outlets that are funded by institutions, governments, that are not part of that global system that I was talking about. Governments that are demonized. Pick up a newspaper and read what they say about Russia's President Putin to understand whether he is or isn't an enemy of the empire or how they see him. Take a look at what they say about Venezuela, what they say about China, what they say about Iran. These countries have media outlets, and it's our responsibility to utilize these media outlets as best we can to say, well, they're lying about a lot of stuff. And one of those things is Eritrea. And let me tell you the truth about it. Also, alternative media outlets. We have to utilize them, the ones that already exist. I managed to publish work in a number of what you could call alternative media outlets, independent media outlets. This is important as well. Understand this. The corporate media system is not going to be penetrated unless they allow you to get into their system. So the truth is, you could try to break down their narratives as much as you can on their platforms, or you create your own to counter the lies that they tell. And that's absolutely critical. Of course, blogs, various websites. The point here is the things that I'm talking about, such as alternative media outlets, independent blogs, these are things that we can do. I did it. I could barely, look, I didn't even make a PowerPoint presentation. I could barely put it together on my computer. I have a blog. I have a website that I put together for almost zero money. It manages to reach some people. I work at it. I put information out there as much as I can. I make friends with other people who do the same. I build networks, friendships, solidarity with people around the world. I will promote their work. They promote my work. This is how it works. This is how you penetrate a globalized system of media. You create your own, and you do it independently so that nobody can come up on this stage and tell you, well, the National Endowment for Democracy doesn't really do all that much. Sorry, that's a lie. They do quite a lot, and it's very dangerous work that they do. They work to destabilize and to destroy countries. That's why Russia has outlawed them. That's why China has moved to control all of these sorts of soft power weapons. And part of our work is to nullify them, to take the lies that they tell, the work that they do to destroy, and to turn it around against them, and to use it to build solidarity networks around the world. Now, many of you, I'm sure, most of you probably are on Facebook and Twitter and all of these social media platforms, and they're very important as well. But understand also that they're controlled too. There are interests that control these platforms. Let me ask, well, I'm not going to ask you because you're not going to all answer me, but let me just make a statement here. You don't control what comes up on your Facebook feed, do you? Whatever comes up, comes up. And I wonder why certain information never comes up, or very rarely comes up, because it's part of a control matrix. So you have to break that. You have to not only flood Facebook, Twitter, all of the rest of these things, of course that's important, but you have to build your own independent platforms. You have to use them as launching points for independent organization and network building. So what's happening here, people are making friendships that will last for a long time, that's important. But my question would be, so what happens when you're not all wearing the same t-shirt? What happens when you go home and you talk to people who don't know anything about Eritrea? Are you telling them, or are you working to help them understand? Because it's very easy to tell people something. It's a lot harder to make them understand. But it's a lot easier if you've got a network of people around the world doing the same thing. And breaking that system of information control is absolutely critical. Now, I want to just finish up with one other point here. You have to make the connection between political war and information war. The empire stands in opposition in an attempt to destroy Eritrea. This is a fact. And in the information war, the corporate media stands in opposition to and in an attempt to destroy independent media. It's the same relationship. It's relations of power, it's relations of control, it's an attempt to destroy. So when you stand to defend Eritrea, you have to do so by defending your own media and blocking what the corporate system wants you to do. And just very briefly, personal networks are important. Friendships are critical. Solidarity building, not just within the Eritrean community, but solidarity building with other people in Africa, with other oppressed people around the world. This is absolutely critical if you want Eritrea to not only break out of the isolation, but to show that it is an example for other countries around the world, and that it can stand against a system. So I'll just finish up by saying that part of what you need to do is to maintain contact, to maintain friendships, and to stand together not only in the times that are emergencies, but to stand together at all times with all the communities that you can, and say, imperialism will never destroy Eritrea. Imperialism will never destroy Africa. Thank you.